Exandria Unlimited, Calamity, Escape from the Bloodkeep, Fantasy High. All of these campaigns have something in common, and that is theme. Hello everybody, I'm Matteo, and today we're going to be talking about why you should probably consider having a theme for your campaign. First of all, what is a theme? A theme is a common concept around which your players will all build their characters. For example, your players could be a gang of scoundrels and thieves out to make a quick buck, or a group of noble heroes trying to save the world from calamity. So why should we have a theme? First of all, it helps explain why the characters are all traveling together. After all, in an ordinary campaign where the players just met in a tavern, it can become a little difficult to explain after a while why the lawful good paladin is still putting up with the rogue's felonious exploits. Second of all, it can help you tell unique and memorable stories that you might not have been able to otherwise. After all, without a theme that your players know about beforehand, how could you create a story about the characters being students at a magical school, or a Peaky Blinders-style crime family, or a Men in Black organization devoted to exorcising extraplanar threats? All of these are unique and interesting stories that can only come about when you have a clear theme in mind. The third reason why you should have a theme is because it helps make sure that each player knows what type of character to make. What I mean by this is that both their purpose, their motivation, and their mechanics fit with the campaign. So, for example, a character that's optimized for combat is going to feel very out of place in an intrigue, politics-based game, whereas that very same political intrigue kind of character is going to feel a little underwhelming and out of place in a good old dungeon crawl. Second of all, the motivation of the characters also needs to align with the story. After all, if one of the players in a heist campaign is playing a lawful good paladin, which has happened to me before, that probably isn't going to end well. They're probably going to have less of a good time, and the other players might also wind up having less of a good time by extension. How do you make a themed campaign? The first thing you need to do is come up with an idea, or ideally a few ideas of what you might want to run. For each of these ideas, come up with the genre, the setting, and the player buy-in. Well, these will be explained in a second. I say ideally have a few campaigns because if you have a few campaigns that you enjoy running, you can pitch them to the players and ask which ones they would be interested in. For example, when I was considering starting a D&D campaign recently, I offered the players 3 different choices. The first was an industrial Wild West style swashbuckling adventure. Second was a survival horror game set in the North Pole of the Eberron setting. And the third was the published adventure, Call of the Netherdeep. This offers your players more choices, so they're more likely to find something that they're invested in. But ultimately, you're the DM, so only pitch stuff that you feel like you'd be interested in running and would have the energy to do. First of all, genre. Genre is pretty simple. Are you aiming for a classic heroic fantasy style? Or are you aiming for more of a horror game, or a heist, intrigue, or perhaps even more of a comedic take on the game? This is pretty simple, but this will inform everything else that you do to create this game, and perhaps even mechanics, which we'll get back to later. Secondly, setting. Where will this campaign be set? You don't need to give the players too many details, just enough so that they can get started with their character building. So I would suggest what technology level it's at. Is this medieval? Is this more 1800s? I would suggest what level of magic there is. How common is magic? After all, a wizard is going to look very different if magic is common versus if they're the first wizard in generations. And then maybe I would suggest giving 1 or 2 other facts that are very important to your setting and help define its identity. Now, I would keep this brief. Now, don't go crazy here. World-building DMs, keep this less than 1 page, please. Just make sure that the players know just enough so that they can create characters that will fit neatly into the world, that are all coherent with the setting. Third, and most important, is player buy-in. These are essentially the requirements for who the player's characters should be. This can include who are they? Are they a crime family? Are they knights? Are they thieves? This is just in general who these characters should be in this campaign. Second of all, what should they care about? A campaign, for example, about the royal succession will be a lot more interesting if the players actually care about who's the king, whereas it will be less interesting if all of them really just want to get paid. Also, how do the characters know each other. This is sort of connected to the first point of who are they? Do they know each other beforehand? Have they just been thrown into a jail cell together with no idea of who each other are? This is a very important thing to establish. Player buy-in also includes things that the players would need to be enthusiastic about in order to enjoy your campaign. For example, the player buy-in section for my survival horror campaign read as such. This is going to be a very dark campaign, both literally and figuratively. Players should be okay with horror themes and be ready to be scared. This campaign will be difficult. Expect to be the underdog in most scenarios. As this is survival horror, long resting may be difficult in the cold, and we may track things like encumbrance and keep precise track of resources like torches and arrows. You will need to think creatively to succeed in this adventure. Good aligned PCs are encouraged. This dark story will be much more impactful if the PCs are genuinely interested in being a light in the dark for the frozen north. As you can see, this player buy-in section talked about all the things that are going to be unique about the campaign and told the players what they would probably need to be enthusiastic about in order to enjoy this campaign. This helps players quickly assess whether this is the campaign for them, and getting all of this out in the open right at the beginning is going to make it a lot easier to help maintain that investment later on and help players buy into your campaign and reinforce the themes themselves. This brings us to my last point about themed campaigns, which is using mechanics to inform genre. Now, if you're a GM who really likes home rules, this is where those sort of things can come into play. So for example, as you just saw in my survival horror example, things like encumbrance and slowly running out of resources and not being able to rest are very important things for survival horror. But if you're running, say, a heroic fantasy campaign where the players are essentially superheroes, then that sort of thing would quickly become boring and really wouldn't be any fun at all. This is also where you can bring in mechanics from other systems, like if you're running cosmic horror, which, to be fair, D&D isn't the best system for cosmic horror. But if you did want to do that, you could bring in mechanics like sanity from Call of Cthulhu. Or if you're running a heist campaign, you could bring in mechanics from Blades in the Dark, which is what I did for my personal heist campaign. Using mechanics to inform genre is potentially a huge topic, so please let me know if you'd like to see another video on that. With that said, thank you so much for watching. Subscribe for more advice for D&D, and if you enjoyed, check out my next video here.